9 o'clock. And joining us on the phone this morning is Representative Yvette Herrell, representing us here in the 2nd Congressional District. Good morning. How are you doing, ma'am?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for making the time for me.
Well, thank you for talking to us today. I know, obviously, we all back here in New Mexico been watching the news and kind of seeing, Congress has been busy.
Been busy, really kind of wreaking havoc upon all of our jobs and our economy and our American workers and American employers. And it's crazy, Mike, because things are just happening so quickly that you hardly have time to talk about some of these bad policies before they've just got another one introduced. And a couple that I just want to highlight really quick is, and so everybody will know, the Equality Act is coming up for a vote later today, I think, or in the morning. And, by just looking at the title, people think, oh, this is a good thing.
Sure.
This is a direct hit on our religious freedoms. This goes a bridge too far in that it can really hold parents accountable with no legal standing if there is going to be any kind of transgender medications, alterations, changes to a minor. Wow. If the parent doesn't agree with it, the parents won't have any legal standings. It forces those who have a moral compass and are pro-life, it forces them to perform abortions, even though their professional judgment may not want that, or their personal judgment. And it's just, and it's a direct hit on what God created, one man, one woman, the family unit. And we already have so many bills in place protecting, the sexual orientation and transgender. And Title IX, it protects students that want to participate in athletic programs. But this really goes way further, and I just want to talk about it for a couple of seconds because it's so important. But this bill actually takes away really any established rights for women, and there's many women organizations that are against it. So this bill would actually say, hey, if somebody identifies as a woman, and this goes into showering in the locker rooms, this is on overnight travel for school, sports programs, to domestic shelters, violent shelters, there's not going to be, we're basically taking away the identity of male versus female. And it's all for one for all, with no regard to anybody's emotional state, safety of a woman. It's horrible. Yeah. And of course, we did a press conference about it today to ensure everybody knows it was members of the House Freedom Caucus that are standing against this, and then changing gears a little bit, this new bill that is the COVID relief. This is another bill that I know everyone's watching closely, but I just want to make sure everybody knows only 9% of this over $1 trillion package will actually go to help relief in terms of COVID. Yeah. The rest of it, 91%, is going to a subway station in California for Nancy Pelosi. It's going to the arts. It's sending aid to foreign countries. It's the same thing, and we know there's over $1 trillion that has not even been spent from the first COVID relief packages. So this is, when you look at it, is it worth putting this kind of debt on the backs of our kids and our grandkids? Sure. And I think that it's not a good decision.
Well, a couple of things. If you don't, first I want to comment or ask a little bit on, or comment more on the first bill you're talking about there, the one dealing with the parents and transgender and all of this. I guess I would also say, because obviously I'm a Christian conservative yourself, but even if you don't look at things from the angle as a Christian conservative, I don't think any time Congress or any government body creates legislation that basically doesn't give parents a say in a decision in their child, that's a problem. I don't care if you're conservative, liberal, religious, non-religious. I think everyone should have a problem with that. You know what I mean?
That's right. You're exactly right. And, the thing about America that makes it great is we are a collective ideas and ideology and different beliefs and values. But when you attack the fundamental belief in how you as a husband and wife want to raise your children and what in what culture, what ideas, what religious backgrounds, what beliefs you want to instill, traditions, the whole thing. This now is going to give government the upper hand. It is a direct attack on just the American family unit. And I don't think a lot of people understand just how detrimental this will be. And can you imagine having small children and then having the government or have a lawsuit filed on you if the government decides that this child, this maybe 10-year-old or 8-year-old or minor child wants some kind of transgender surgery and you don't think that's proper, you as the parent can be held liable.
Sure.
I mean, this is what we've allowed government to get so far into our everyday lives. We've talked about it before, but to this extent, complete overreach. And this is what the beginnings of a dangerously socialistic country looks like when we don't even have the ability to make the decisions for our own families.
Yeah. I've got a kind of curious, because the way I see transgender, and I know we're going to get, it's a little philosophical here, but the way I see this, and to me it makes common sense, but I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but when we look at someone that's transgender, it's different than saying someone's homosexual. Homosexual, I mean, I'm no scientist, I don't know, but you could make an argument that something in the DNA, kind of like why do you like chocolate or coffee or whatever it is, or something in the DNA there. But to me, transgender, I feel like that's a mental health problem. If your brain is saying you're one gender and your body's clearly something else, I feel like it's a mental health problem, and we should treat it as such. No different than if someone's got multiple personality disorders, we don't give them 7 driver's licenses, one for each personality. I mean, is there anyone talking like, hey, this is a mental health thing? We should treat it as a mental health, not as a gender or its own identity. I mean, and again, I don't know enough in science if my argument's valid or not, but as someone with common sense, I would think, hey, if your brain's telling you something different, there's something going on wrong there, and we need to treat that as such. I mean, has anybody have that conversation in the circles you're in, these meetings and things?
No, that has not been a conversation in terms of looking at the science, or maybe is there something, can we peel back layers and look at the driving factor or the force? It's really been more about protecting those that want to identify to a different sex than what they were naturally born.
Sure.
And then putting in, substantial protections. This is just changing the dynamic in the way in which we even have, this is changing science on paper. Now it's just saying, everything is equal and you can't really identify as man or woman. And it really is putting the burden and really more of a threat against women's rights, because now, especially when you look at the sporting events, where now, this doesn't make sense for women, especially collegiate level, who have worked very hard to get to that certain level of having an opportunity to play on a collegiate level and extend into a professional level in some type of sport, whether it's tennis or track or what have you, and now to have that, there's no parity there in that competition. And we can point to lawsuits all over the place where some of this gender-specific legislation and these equality acts that have been imposed on the state level have caused a lot of lawsuits and more questions than answers. And, of course, this just takes it even further. But, no, back to your original question, there haven't been any conversations of that nature. But what's interesting, Mike, is this was a bill that was introduced in the 116th Congress, and already, I mean, here it is. We barely started hearing bills, and this one's already on the floor for a full floor vote. Wow. And it just, the depth in which this overreaches, and it hasn't been, in a way, talked about enough. It happened so very quickly to where we could really engage with the general public and get that feedback. And I just happen to know from Shared Values in the 2nd Congressional District, this really is it is an overreaching, no one wants to judge or be, saying we can't do this or that. But when we put the lives of our children, or we put the lives of those that could be most threatened by this, say women that have been put into a domestic shelter, and now they're going to share the bathrooms and the shower and the sleeping arrangements with men that want to identify as a female, or your young child going to a camp, and now there's an 18-year-old boy that wants to identify as a female, and now, I mean, this is just unrealistic and crazy. And it, again, just strikes at our religious freedoms.
Sure.
It strikes, it just tries to disintegrate all the goodwill and the programs that are done through our church programs, to our faith-based programs, because now they're going to have to separate doing these things, not offer these services, or face heavy lawsuits if they do. I mean, the burden is going to be on the American people and the organizations that have tried very hard to sustain humankind, bring programs to the forefront to help the poor, the downtrodden. I mean, this is such a sad day. And then, of course, again, that coupled with this COVID-19 bill, and then we'll have, which is earmarked city. It's, they're going to bring in that bill back too. Congress voted some years back to eliminate the use of earmarks, and now there's a big conversation to bring that right back. And to me, I sat there and thought, well, haven't we just been seeing all these earmarks for these special programs with these arts and streets and subways in these COVID bills? And we've put out a statement saying, we don't need to bring these back. We need to get fiscal responsible in our spending and get this under control. But of course, that seems to be falling on deaf ears in Washington, D.C.
And that's and from my point of view, and you can kind of correct or confirm this. The real problem we talk about, like this COVID bill, initially, the what we're talking about and the monies and things that it's for good, but like you said, people earmark or tag on to this, and it's like, okay, well, we're going to get this bill passed through Congress. I've been trying to get this one bill through. I'm going to tack it on to this. I mean, that's the kind of stuff we're seeing here. And now something that was good government now just gets inflated and bloated into something that they're like, well, you're not going to help people. Because basically they'll tag something that you don't want on there. And then now what happens is they say, well, I'm not voting for this because of all this stuff that's attached, and they spin it and turn it, well, you don't care about the people. It's like, no, I want this part. I don't want all this other nonsense you all tacked onto it. And that's kind of what you're dealing with, right?
It's exactly right, because when you try to stand up and speak in common sense terms and values, for instance, in this COVID relief, it's the $15 an hour federal minimum wage. All right. Well, there's a lot of little stores and shops in my district, in this district, all over the country, that are not a high-paying job scenario, but maybe it's an ice cream shop or a coffee shop. If they made it through the COVID shutdowns and lockdowns by the governor, this is probably going to be the nail in the coffin. And I've had more than one business owner call me and say that if this gets passed on the state or federal level, I have no choice but to give my company back, or my business back to the bank, or shut it down, because I can't afford to pay that. Revenues are very slow in coming back in and infusing that income into these companies, and it doesn't make sense. But what's worse is even the CBO, the Wall Street Journal, wrote articles and said, look, a $15 an hour minimum wage, it's going to cost millions of dollars into the country's economy. It's going to hurt more than help, and we're going to lose jobs over it because people just will not be able to sustain paying that kind of minimum wage. And there's just so many things wrong with this. I introduced a bill the other day in a committee markup for part of the COVID bill and said, we already know that over $1 trillion hasn't been spent. So I said, okay, of the monies that were allocated to the individual states, and we know all that's not been spent, 25% of that needs to be pushed down to the local level, to our small rural communities and towns, so that they can infuse that money into their communities the best way they know how because of COVID. That could not even pass a committee hearing. And what's interesting to me is I know that a lot of these people have rural communities within their districts, and yet it's just lockstep. We don't care what's good for the American people. Yeah. We want to get this pushed through. We want people reliant on government because somehow they're going to have an idea of how we can reestablish an economy, and it doesn't make sense. And I think as the dust starts to settle and we can see the impact of these executive orders and this COVID, and we've now got the whole issue at the border, and that's another day on the radio. But, if the amnesty program or immigration program that President Trump wants to happens, but there will be an onslaught of people And the idea of them registering and having to go through a process as far as citizenship, it will be so streamlined. So now we're compromising jobs for people that are going to get to come here illegally to take up these jobs. And I know there are lots of people in New Mexico that want to get back to work, and
Sure.
we've just been waiting on government to open the doors. So, we could go on, but I do appreciate just being able to jump on for a few minutes
absolutely.
and kind of give that update. And we need to keep doing this because I want to make sure people are hearing what's really going on in Washington, D.C., because the messaging coming out is certainly not reflective of a conservative value or even a business value. And in some of these cases, like the Equality Act, family value, we're just trampling on these values that are important to us.
Yeah, I've never liked the government getting in the moral business. That's not their place to do that sometimes. But anyway,
that's right.
that's why we have
more
families and churches and things.
Yeah, we've had too much government interfering with our personal lives, and to the extent we're seeing it now, it's appalling. And we are on, I believe, a fast track to just government will be dictating everything. I mean, everything. And this is what's frightening. This is really tearing apart the fabric of the America that we love, we grew up in, that we fought for. And it feels as though we're on a fast track to see the America that we believe in and grew up in just demolished because of bad governance, because of bad policies, and because of a willingness to just wield the power with the attitude of because we can, because we're in the majority. And that's what's very dangerous to this entire process.
Well, hopefully at some point they're going to alienate some of the moderates, and they'll jump aboard at some point, because if they keep pushing that agenda, they're going to alienate the moderates, the people that aren't the far progressive lefts and things like that.
That's right. I think that's right. I really do. And like I said, when the dust settles, I think the American people are already starting to understand what a disaster this is by having this administration under these executive orders and these just remarkable changes that are being made so swiftly. But I think the American worker and business owner and, all around the country and certainly New Mexico will start thinking, wait, we've got to put the brakes on some of this stuff. And there's very little conversation happening. It's just been shoved through, and it's kind of like what we're seeing on the state level. I try to kind of keep my eye on what's going on in New Mexico, and it's kind of the same thing, only just a much grander scale. And between the two legislative opportunities for Democrats right now, between New Mexico and Washington, it just doesn't leave much room for the American family and just traditional values and things that matter. And so this is where we've got to just stand united and keep fighting back on this stuff.
Absolutely.
And I think you're right. I think there'll be folks that'll kind of come on board. The more moderates will come on board and say, wait a minute, this is hurting our communities, our small towns, and I think that's what will happen. I do believe that. So, but we'll just keep pressing in and doing our best and keep praying about it.
Yes, good luck to you and your staff, and we're thankful that you guys are out there fighting for us, and stay safe. I know something we feel like we should probably say every time now after what we dealt with a month ago here. So
exactly. So I sure will. Well, thanks for making the time to get me on, and I'll definitely make sure I'm on again sometime, and just can't wait to get back and see everybody.
Yep. I think we got you one month, every month you getting to join us here, obviously your schedule permitting, but we do appreciate that, and we'll talk to you next month, if not sooner.
You bet. Sounds good, Mike. Okay, you have a great weekend.
Thank you. You too, Congresswoman. Appreciate you.
Yes, sir. All right. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. All right, that was Representative Yvette Herrell. Thank her, as always, some good information there. Yeah, a couple bills there that are really some interesting, and some, it's, like I said, tell her your thoughts, send her your thing, but she's fighting. You heard what she said there, and this is what we're dealing with. We knew this was coming, and there's going to be more of this. Just see what happens. All right, it is 9.